Colleen's voice was hoarse. "No, she's something else." The light swallowed them both as the second shockwave ripped through Willow Creek. When the dust settled, the town was silent again, but the silence was different this time. Not absence, expectation, because the vault was no longer just beneath the bank. It was spreading. Smoke rolled through the broken streets of Willow Creek like a tide, slow and choking. The air shimmered with heat and static, every breath heavy with the scent of dust and ozone. Where the bank once stood proud and silent, there was now a wound in the earth, a crater of light and ruin, pulsing like a heartbeat that refused to die. Henry coughed, forcing himself up from the debris. The world rang in his ears. His vision swam in flashes of green and gold. The vault had exploded or awakened. He couldn't tell which. Beside him, Sheriff Colleen pushed herself to her knees, her uniform streaked with ash. "What in God's name? What was that?" Henry wiped the blood from his forehead, his voice a rasp. It wasn't an explosion, it was release. The glow at the center of the crater brightened. The agents, those who had survived, stood frozen, their weapons useless in their hands. Their shadows stretched unnaturally across the ground, bending toward the light like grass toward the sun. Then from the heart of the light, a figure stepped forward. Mara. She moved slowly, almost weightless, her hair flowing as if underwater. Her eyes shimmered with the same gold that now lined the vault's walls. The air around her vibrated, calm, controlled, dangerous. Henry stumbled forward. "Mara." "It's me." Her gaze met his, and for a heartbeat he saw her. The woman who had laughed over cheap coffee, who had cried when she first opened that bank door. But the voice that came out wasn't the same. It carried an echo, as though countless others spoke through her. "You shouldn't have come back." Henry froze. "You're alive." "Alive is not what I am." Colleen aimed her gun, her voice trembling. "Whatever this is, it's not her anymore." Mara tilted her head slightly, eyes flicking to the sheriff. The weapon shook in Colleen's grip as frost began to bloom along the barrel. No more guns. No more taking. Colleen dropped the pistol, clutching her frozen hand. Henry took another cautious step forward. "Mara, listen to me. You stopped it once. You don't have to do this." Her expression softened for a fraction of a second. "I didn't stop it, Henry. I became it." The words hit him like a blow. The vault was never a thing. It was a hunger. She continued. "It needed a keeper to hold the balance. I opened it, and now it sees through me." Behind her, the surviving agents began to move again, forming a line at the edge of the crater. Their leader, the same masked man from before, raised his voice over the wind. "Contain the subject. Fire on my mark." Henry shouted, "Don't." But the order came anyway. Gunfire tore through the night. Bullets sliced through the mist, but before they reached her, they froze Medusas, bended in time like dust in sunlight. Mara closed her eyes. The air shimmered. Then every bullet turned to ash. A wave of light rippled outward, sweeping through the ranks of soldiers like a silent scream. Their shadows twisted, contorted, then dissolved into the air, leaving only the empty shells of their rifles clattering to the ground. Henry shielded his face as the shockwave passed. When he looked again, the street was littered with nothing but dust and silence. Mara stood alone in the center of it all, light flickering around her like a halo and a storm all at once. Henry stepped closer, desperate. "Mara, if you're still in there, please, come back. You're not a vault, you're you." Her voice softened, almost tender. "I wish that were true." She looked at her hands, glowing, trembling, dissolving at the edges. "But every debt I touch becomes part of me. Every sin, every secret they buried here, it's all awake now, and it's spreading." Colleen's voice broke behind them. "How do we stop it?" Mara's eyes lifted toward the horizon, where the first light of dawn fought against the rolling fog. "You can't stop truth. You can only contain it." She turned back to Henry, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Go, take what's left of the ledger. Don't let them rebuild it. Promise me." Henry shook his head. "Not without you." Mara smiled sadly. "Then the town dies with me." Before he could answer, the light around her flared. The ground began to crack again, splitting down the middle of the street. Golden fissures spread in every direction, veins of light crawling through the pavement toward the hills. Henry shouted, "Mara!" She looked at him one last time, her eyes clear, human again. "Keep it balanced." Then she stepped backward into the light. The vault roared, swallowing her whole. The golden glow surged once more, then dimmed. The cracks sealed. The wind stopped, and just like that, it was over. Henry collapsed to his knees, the ledger clutched in his shaking hands. Its cover was warm, pulsing faintly as if alive. Across the front, new words were etched in gold. Balance restored. Colleen knelt beside him, staring into the silent crater. Is it really over? Henry didn't answer. He just looked toward the rising sun, its light reflecting off the ledger in his lap. Nothing ever ends, he whispered. It just waits. As the dawn spread across the ruins of Willow Creek, the vault lay buried again, its heartbeat faint but steady. For now the town would sleep. But deep below, beneath marble and ash, something new was forming, something patient, waiting for the next hand to reach for the key. The fires had burned out by morning, leaving Willow Creek in a gray stillness that didn't feel like peace, only aftermath. The smell of smoke hung heavy over the streets, mingled with the bitter tang of metal and earth. The vault had gone quiet again, its pulse silenced, but the echoes of the night still clung to the town like ghosts that refused to leave. Henry stood in the rubble that had once been the front steps of the bank. The marble was cracked, the pillars half collapsed, but the vault door still stood, sealed shut, glimmering faintly beneath layers of ash. It looked less like a wound now and more like a monument. Colleen approached slowly, her uniform torn, her eyes rimmed red from exhaustion. "We lost half the street," she said softly. "Power's out from here to the ridge, and the agents, they're gone." All of them. Henry didn't turn. They didn't vanish. They were taken back. Colleen swallowed hard, glancing at the golden light pulsing faintly through the vault's seams. And her? Henry's jaw clenched. "She's in there." The sheriff looked at him carefully. "Are you sure she's still?" "She is." He cut in, the vaults breathing again, but slower now, controlled, balanced. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence between them was heavy, filled with things neither could explain. Finally, Colleen sighed. "So what do we do now?" Henry's gaze drifted toward the horizon. "We finish what she started." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the ledger, the same one that had survived fire, water, and chaos. Its cover was scorched, its pages half burned, but the ink still shimmered faintly gold. When he opened it, the last entry glowed like an ember, balance restored. But beneath it, fresh words were writing themselves in real time, letters etching across the paper with invisible hands, but the cost remains. The ground beneath them rumbled softly, a reminder that the vault was never entirely still. Colleen frowned. "What does that mean?" Henry didn't answer. He simply closed the ledger and turned toward the vault, stepping closer until he stood within arm's reach of the sealed door. He placed a hand against the cold metal. The faint hum responded immediately, a pulse rising under his fingertips. For a heartbeat, he thought he heard her voice. Soft, distant, familiar. "Henry." He froze. "Mara." The air shimmered. The light through the vault's seams brightened, forming patterns across the surface. Circles, symbols, lines like a heartbeat drawn in gold. Her voice came again, a whisper carried on air that wasn't really air at all. "It's not over. They'll come for it again." Henry's throat tightened. "Then we'll stop them. I'll protect it. I swear." Silence, then, faintly, "Don't protect it. Hide it." Before he could respond, the light dimmed again, the vault cooling beneath his palm. The whisper faded, leaving only the steady rhythm of wind moving through broken stone. Colleen stepped closer. What did she say? He turned to her slowly. She wants it hidden. Hidden where? Henry looked down at the ledger in his hands, then toward the distant mountains. Endless, ancient, untouched. Somewhere it can't be found. Somewhere it won't ever be opened again. The sheriff nodded grimly. You really think that's possible? He gave a tired, hollow smile. It has to be. The sun began to rise, washing the ruins in pale gold light. It touched the vault's surface and made it shimmer, warm, almost alive. For the first time in months, Henry felt something close to hope. Not peace, not safety, just the fragile understanding that maybe, just maybe, what was broken could finally rest. He took one last look at the vault. "Goodbye, Mara," he whispered. "You paid the price." Then he turned and walked away, the ledger pressed to his chest, the key in his pocket heavy as truth itself. Behind him, the vault door pulsed once more, one slow, quiet heartbeat, and then went still. As dawn broke fully over Willow Creek, the light spilled across the cracks and ashes, sealing them in gold. The vault had closed its eyes again, but every debt leaves a trace, and somewhere deep below, the memory of her promise still echoed through the silence. The days that followed blurred together, quiet, hollow, and heavy with the kind of silence that meant something had changed forever. Willow Creek had survived the night, but it no longer felt like the same town. The streets were coated in dust that shimmered faintly under the sun. The buildings hummed softly when the wind passed through them, and every person who walked those streets felt as if they were being watched not by something sinister but by something awake. Henry didn't sleep much. He worked in the back room of the Chronicle, the vault key on the table beside him, the ledger open to its final entry. Every few hours the ink would shift, faint new marks appearing in the margins, not words, but heartbeat patterns, steady and rhythmic, like the pulse of the thing buried beneath the town. He had made his decision. It couldn't stay here. At dawn, he packed his car, just the essentials, a blanket, the ledger, the key, and a map dotted with places Mara had once spoken of. Abandoned mines, forgotten train stations, underground shelters, places built to be lost. He didn't know which would hold the vault's secret next. He just knew it couldn't stay in Willow Creek. As he turned the ignition, he looked once more toward the ruins of the old bank. It stood silent, rebuilt only by sunlight. For a moment he thought he saw movement in the upstairs window, a figure, faint and golden, watching him with calm eyes. He smiled softly. "Keep them safe, Mara." The figure didn't fade. It simply nodded once before dissolving into the light. Henry drove. The town grew smaller in the rear-view mirror until it disappeared behind the hills, swallowed by morning fog. The road stretched out before him, endless and empty. The farther he drove, the lighter the air became, as if the weight of what he carried was being shared by the land itself. By the second day he reached the mountains. Old mining tunnels cut through the rock relics from another century, just deep enough, just forgotten enough. It was perfect. He parked near the entrance of an old shaft, the air cool and still. Inside, dust drifted through beams of sunlight that pierced cracks in the ceiling. It smelled of iron and time. Henry carried the ledger and the key into the heart of the tunnel. Every step echoed like footsteps in a cathedral. When he reached the deepest chamber, he stopped. There was already something waiting, a stone pedestal, ancient and smooth, like the mountain itself had carved it for this moment. He set the ledger down gently. Then he placed the key beside it. The air shifted. The ground hummed. A faint gold light seeped from the stone, wrapping both objects in a thin halo before fading again. Henry exhaled slowly, whispering, "Rest now." As he turned to leave, he paused. The faintest sound followed him, a woman's voice, distant but unmistakable. "Thank you." He smiled without turning back. "You're welcome." Outside, the wind had changed. It was softer now, no longer carrying whispers, just the sound of air moving freely through the valley. Henry looked toward the horizon. The sky was burning orange, the first sign of sunset painting the world in warmth. He felt the pull of sleep for the first time in days, the kind that comes not from exhaustion, but from peace. He got back into the car, turned the key, and drove toward the setting sun. Behind him, the mine entrance shimmered faintly before collapsing in on itself, sealing forever. The vault was gone, the debt was buried, the world, for now, was balanced. But as night crept over the mountains, far beneath the earth where no light could reach, the stone pedestal pulsed once a soft, rhythmic beat, and in the dark, the gold lettering on the ledger's cover began to glow again. Balance held. And so, the vault slept once more, buried not under a bank or a town, but under the weight of a promise, because some truths aren't meant to be erased. They're meant to be guarded until the next heart brave enough to open them comes along. Months passed before the town dared to breathe again. Willow Creek had become something else, quieter, slower, almost reverent. The bank's ruins had been cleared away, leaving an empty square that locals began calling the Hollow. Grass had started to grow through the cracks of the old foundation, and in the mornings, when the mist rolled low over the valley, a soft golden shimmer still lingered there, like sunlight trapped in the air. Henry had left weeks earlier. No one knew where he went, only that his car had been seen heading west before dawn. Some said he'd gone to bury the past. Others whispered he was still watching over them. Somewhere beyond the hills, the sheriff had taken temporary charge of the Chronicle building, turning it into a community hub. Life trickled back, one light, one family, one heartbeat at a time. The vault was gone, but its story had changed the people who remained. And then one morning, the first miracle arrived. At the break of dawn, the town accountant, a quiet man named Ralph Dunn, opened his office door to find a brown envelope resting on the steps. Inside was a single gold certificate, crisp, untouched, marked Federal Containment Fund, Series 1974. Alongside it was a note, handwritten in soft looping script, for rebuilding what was forgotten. Within hours the story spread. Every household, every shop, every farmer on the outskirts of Willow Creek found the same envelope, each with one gold certificate and the same message. No one knew where they came from. No one saw who delivered them, but somehow every family received exactly what they needed, enough to pay off debts, repair homes, restart lives. Not a fortune, just balance. By noon, the entire town had gathered in the Hollow. The old mayor stood at the front steps of the cleared bank, holding one of the certificates up to the sunlight. "These," he said, his voice trembling, "are not charity. They are reminders, proof that value isn't about what we hoard, it's about what we return." The people applauded softly, not out of excitement, but out of understanding. And as the sound faded, a little boy tugged on his mother's sleeve near the back of the crowd. "Mom," he whispered, "look." The mother turned. At the edge of the square, where the marble foundation met the soil, something was glowing faintly, a thin line of golden light tracing the outline of what used to be the vault. It pulsed once, then again, slow, gentle, alive. The crowd fell silent. The sheriff stepped forward, eyes wide. "Henry," she whispered, but the glow faded, leaving only the stillness of morning and the faint sound of wind through the grass. The boy picked up one of the envelopes left near his feet. It was different, smaller, older. He opened it carefully. Inside was a single note, written in familiar handwriting. "Every promise kept is a deposit returned. M.E." His mother's hand went to her mouth. The sheriff took the note, reading the initials again, her eyes shining. "Mara Ellis," she said softly. For a moment no one moved. Then, slowly, everyone bowed their heads, not in fear, but in gratitude. Hollow shimmered faintly, the air charged with warmth. Somewhere above, the clouds parted just enough for sunlight to pour through a perfect beam, landing on the place where the vault had once stood. And for the first time in decades, Willow Creek felt whole. As the people drifted away, the boy looked back one last time. In the light, he thought he saw her, a woman in a long coat, standing where the vault used to be, smiling faintly before fading into the morning sun. The legend of the vault had ended, but its value had just begun to return. Evening settled softly over Willow Creek, wrapping the town in a golden calm that felt both foreign and familiar. The shadows stretched long across the square where the bank once stood, painting the cobblestones with the last light of day. The hollow had become something sacred now, not through ceremony, but through silence. It was a space no one spoke loudly in anymore, a place where whispers felt like prayers. The townspeople had started leaving flowers near the old foundation, not bouquets, just single blossoms, wild ones, daisies, thistles, mountain lilies, the kind that grew without asking permission. No one told them to do it, it just began. That night, Sheriff Colleen Reeves locked the Chronicle office and walked home through the quiet streets. The gold certificate she'd received that morning was tucked in her jacket pocket, though she hadn't used it. She couldn't. It felt less like money, more like a message. A promise. As she crossed the town square, something caught her eye. A soft flicker, not light from the street lamps, but something warmer. She stopped. The faint golden pulse had returned, tracing its path along the edges of the foundation where the vault once stood. The rhythm was slower now, steady like a resting heartbeat. Colleen knelt beside it, pressing her palm to the earth. It was warm, alive. You kept your word, she whispered. A soft wind brushed past her, gentle and cool, carrying the scent of rain that never fell. She looked up, and for the briefest moment, she wasn't alone. Mara stood in front of her, not a ghost, not a vision, just presence, solid, radiant and calm. Her eyes were no longer the haunted ones of the woman who had fought the vault. They were clear, peaceful. Colleen's throat tightened. You really did it, didn't you? Mara smiled faintly. It's not about doing, it's about returning. The world keeps taking, and someone always has to give back. Why you? Mara's gaze drifted to the horizon. Because I was the one who opened it. The one who heard it breathe. The vault wasn't evil, it was unfinished. It just needed to learn what value really was. Colleen blinked back tears, and now, Mara said softly, it sleeps, but not forever. One day, someone else will dig too deep, and the balance will shift again. It always does. She looked down at Colleen, her voice barely more than wind. When that happens, remember this: you can't destroy what's been made from greed. You can only change what it means. The sheriff's hand tightened against the ground. Then I'll protect it. I'll protect your town. Mara's expression softened with gratitude. It's not mine anymore. It's theirs. As she spoke, the light from the ground began to rise, swirling gently around her. The warmth spread through the square, brushing against every flower, every stone, every breath of air. Mara looked one last time at Colleen and whispered, "Tell my son I kept my promise." Then she was gone, dissolving into the golden air, leaving only the faint hum of the vault's pulse beneath the earth. Colleen sat there for a long time, staring at the empty space where Mara had stood. Then she looked down and saw something new beside her hand, a small key, old and familiar, engraved with a single word, legacy. She picked it up carefully, turning it in her fingers. The metal was warm, alive with quiet energy. She slipped it into her pocket and stood, the faint smile on her lips touched by awe and sorrow. When she looked back toward the hollow, the glow had faded completely. Only the wildflowers shimmered faintly under the moonlight, their petals reflecting the last trace of Mara's light. Somewhere a child laughed. Somewhere else a church bell rang for the first time in years. Life had begun again. Colleen turned toward Main Street, whispering to the night, "Rest easy, Mara. We'll keep the balance." And as the stars stretched over Willow Creek, the golden pulse beneath the earth slowed into rhythm with the town above, one steady beat, soft as breath, patient as time. Value had returned, not in fortune, but in faith. Years passed, Seasons rolled through Willow Creek like quiet tides, spring warming its bones, autumn painting its soul, winter reminding it what silence felt like. The town changed, slowly but completely. The old marble square was now a garden, the place once known as the Hollow reborn into life. Children played where the vault had once breathed. Flowers grew through the cracks that money had once sealed shut. Yet, when dawn broke on certain mornings, when the mist hung just right and sunlight touched the ground at the perfect angle, a faint shimmer still rippled across the soil. Not bright, not haunting, just there, a heartbeat under the earth. Colleen Reeves still wore the badge, though she rarely needed it any more. Crime had vanished, not out of fear, but understanding. The people had found balance, in small ways sharing tools, trading food, fixing homes together instead of waiting for someone else to do it. She walked the quiet main street each morning, coffee in hand, as the town woke with her. The Chronicle's sign had been restored, the bell over the diner door jingled again, and new faces had begun to appear, travelers, families, drifters drawn to a place that somehow felt good. They never knew the story, not the truth. Only whispers of a vault that once held $300 million and a woman who bought it for $1. To them it was folklore, to Colleen it was memory. Every week she visited the garden at the center of town. There, beneath the wild daisies and mountain lilies, stood a single bronze plaque. It read simply, Mara Ellis, Keeper of the Balance. Colleen always brought one flower, not out of ritual, but out of gratitude. She'd kneel, rest her hand on the soil, and feel the faint warmth that still lingered below. One morning, as she stood there in the soft dawn, she noticed a small envelope resting against the plaque. It was sealed with red wax, the stamp pressed cleanly with a symbol she hadn't seen in years, a single circle with a line through it. The mark of the vault. Her pulse quickened. She looked around, but no one was there. She knelt, picked it up, and broke the seal. Inside was a letter not typed, not printed. Handwritten, Colleen, you've kept the balance longer than I expected. The town is healing, but you should know balance never dies. It moves. The ledger was never meant to end. It records as long as the world remembers what was taken. Guard what you can. Teach what you must. When the next debt rises, make sure they understand the cost. Colleen's hands trembled as she finished reading. The words carried no fear, only truth and a kind of peace that came from someone who had made her choice long ago. She folded the letter carefully and slipped it into her jacket. Then she looked toward the horizon where the mist had begun to lift. The sunlight rolled down the hills, golden and endless, and for a moment it almost looked alive, like the earth itself was breathing again. Behind her, the plaque caught the light. The engraved letters shimmered faintly as the acknowledging her silence. Mara, she whispered, I'll keep it safe. And then she smiled, not in sadness, but in understanding. In the distance, the church bell rang once, clear and bright. The sound carried across the valley, echoing through the town, over the mountains, and into the quiet places of the world. It was a reminder that legacy isn't what we leave behind in stone or paper, but what we keep alive in each other. The sun began to set over Willow Creek, its golden light stretching across the valley like a final blessing. The town glowed softly, every window catching the sunset, as if reflecting a secret peace the world had almost forgotten. Colleen stood on the hill above the town, the same hill where, years ago, the vault's light had once burned through the fog. Now there was nothing but silence, birds returning to their nests, and the whisper of wind through grass that swayed like gentle waves. She held the letter in her hands, reading it one last time before folding it carefully and slipping it into her pocket. Down below, life went on, children playing in the square, shopkeepers closing early, the smell of bread drifting from the bakery. The town had become everything Mara had hoped for: alive, selfless, balanced. Colleen whispered into the fading light, "You kept your promise, Mara, and we kept ours." The faintest hum rose from the ground beneath her boots, not threatening, not unnatural, just a pulse, a heartbeat. She smiled. As she turned to walk back toward town, something caught her eye, a boy, maybe 12 years old, walking alone toward the hollow. He carried something in both hands. A weathered box, half wrapped in canvas. She called out softly, "Hey there, you okay?" He looked up, startled, then smiled shyly. "Yes, ma'am. My grandpa found this in the attic, said it was time to give it back." Colleen frowned slightly. "Give what back?" The boy lifted the box toward her. "He said it belonged to the woman who saved the town." She took it carefully, her fingers brushing the rough surface. The box was old carved wood, sealed with the same vault symbol burned into its lid. She hesitated, then lifted the latch. Inside, wrapped in layers of faded linen, was the ledger, but it wasn't scorched anymore. Its cover gleamed faintly gold, the pages untouched by time, and on the very first page new words had appeared, written in the same soft script she recognized from Mara's letters. "To whoever finds this, the world never stops taking. The only thing that keeps it alive is when someone decides to give back. If you're reading this, then the balance has chosen you. Don't be afraid. Just listen." Colleen's breath caught. The pages beneath the message were blank, waiting. The boy tilted his head. "What is it?" She smiled softly. "It's a promise." He blinked. "A promise for what?" "To remember," she said, "and to protect what's worth keeping." She closed the box and handed it back to him gently. "You keep it safe for now." He nodded, clutching it close. "I will." As he walked away toward the glowing square, Colleen felt a warmth spread through her chest, the same calm that always came before something right began again. The sky above Willow Creek turned from gold to deep violet, stars flickering through the veil of dusk. The wind carried a whisper through the streets, not eerie, not haunting, just familiar. Every promise kept is a deposit returned. Colleen looked up, tears glinting in her eyes, and whispered back, "And every heart that remembers is interest earned." The breeze shifted, almost like a laugh, before fading into the night. From the town square below, the faint hum of life continued, the sound of laughter, of doors closing, of a world finally in rhythm with itself. And deep beneath the earth, beneath the garden that had once been the vault, the golden light pulsed once soft and steady before dimming to sleep again. Balance restored, legacy preserved. As the stars blanketed the sky, Willow Creek stood quiet and whole, not because it had forgotten its past, but because it had learned from it. The vault was gone, but its heart remained. Not made of steel or gold, but of the people who chose to do what was right when no one was watching. The story of Mara Ellis had ended, but the legacy of her balance had only just begun.